Can I sit here? A sick little girl asked the stranger. He turned out to be a widowed CEO. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. On a chilly afternoon, in a quiet corner of a park, a little girl with pale skin and a sickly face sat alone on a park bench. The wind was sharp, and the clouds threatened to bring rain. She had been feeling weak for days, and her mother, unable to leave work, had told her to rest until she could come home. She was used to being alone, but today, the cold was unbearable. Her small hands gripped the edge of the bench as she tried to keep warm, but it was no use. She felt too dizzy, and the world around her seemed to blur. As she sat there, shivering, a man passed by, his footsteps slow and deliberate. His coat was thick, and he had the look of someone who was used to being in charge, yet there was a quiet sadness in his eyes. He noticed the girl sitting alone and could see her trembling from the cold. His heart tugged, and without thinking, he walked over to her. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, his voice surprisingly soft for someone so tall and imposing. The girl looked up at him, startled by the sudden attention. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I'm just cold. I don't feel well," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The man's brow furrowed. He could see that she wasn't just cold. She looked exhausted, as though she hadn't been eating well. "Where's your family?" he asked, kneeling down to her level. She shook her head. "My mom is at work. She told me to wait here, but I feel sick." The man's heart softened. He glanced around, seeing no one else nearby, and decided to sit beside her. "Can I sit here with you?" he asked. The little girl nodded, grateful for the company, though she couldn't understand why he would want to sit with her. She was nothing special. The man sat in silence for a moment, letting the stillness settle between them. He didn't know why he had stopped, but something about her quiet vulnerability touched him deeply. As the minutes passed, the girl leaned against him for warmth, too weak to hold herself up. "I'm sorry," she mumbled after a while. "I don't want to bother you." The man shook his head, his voice low. "You're not bothering me. I just want to make sure you're okay." It was then that he realized how much he missed this helping someone, making a difference in their life. His own life had been consumed with business, his wife's recent passing, and his own loneliness. He hadn't spoken to anyone like this in months. Suddenly, the little girl's eyes fluttered, and she slumped slightly. Panic rose in the man's chest. He quickly stood, scooping her up in his arms. "Hold on," he said urgently. "I'm taking you to the hospital." As he rushed to the nearest emergency room, the cold air biting at his face, he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was no accident. Something in him had changed in those few minutes, and he wasn't sure if it was the girl or the quiet reminder of his own lost innocence that had done it. But one thing was certain: he would not let this girl slip away, not if he could help it. Little did he know, this moment of kindness would change both of their lives forever. The hospital was only a few blocks away, but it felt like an eternity as the man rushed to get the little girl the help she needed. He held her tightly in his arms, carefully shielding her from the cold wind as he moved quickly. Every minute felt like a lifetime. When he finally arrived at the emergency room, the nurses rushed over to him, immediately taking the girl from his arms and placing her on a stretcher. The man's heart raced as they pushed her inside. He felt helpless, unsure of what to do next. He sat in the waiting room, anxiously tapping his foot on the floor, his thoughts racing. Who was this little girl? Why did he feel such an intense need to protect her? The hospital was quiet, the only sound being the low hum of the fluorescent lights above. It was almost as if the entire world was holding its breath. He had been in this kind of silence before, but never like this, never with a child he had just met, whose life seemed to hang in the balance. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Then, the door opened, and a nurse stepped out. "She's stable for now," she said, her voice calm but professional. "She has a high fever and malnutrition, but we've started treatment. She'll need to stay here overnight." Relief flooded the man's chest, and he let out a deep breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He nodded, standing up. "Can I see her?" The nurse smiled faintly. "Of course. Follow me." She led him down the sterile hallway, stopping at a room near the end. Through the window of the door, he could see the little girl lying in bed, hooked up to an IV. She looked pale, her breathing shallow but steady. The man felt a pang in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. It was like the walls he had built around his heart since his wife passed were slowly starting to crumble. As he entered the room, the little girl stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She blinked at him in confusion, then slowly smiled. "You saved me," she whispered weakly. He sat down in the chair beside her bed, taking her small hand in his. "You don't have to thank me," he said softly. "I just want to make sure you're okay." The girl's smile faded slightly, and she looked up at him with a quiet seriousness. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I don't want to be alone." His heart tightened. He had always been a man who prided himself on his independence. But in that moment, he realized how deeply he missed being needed, how deeply he missed the simple human connection that he had neglected for so long. "You're not alone," he said firmly. "I'll be here, I promise." The little girl seemed to relax at his words, her grip on his hand tightening. She closed her eyes, drifting back to sleep. He sat there for a while, watching over her, his thoughts drifting to his own life. He had been so consumed by his work, his grief, and his loneliness, that he hadn't allowed himself to truly care about anyone for a long time. But this little girl, with her innocence and her vulnerability, had opened something in him that he thought was long buried. The next few hours passed in a blur. The doctor came in to check on her, and the man sat quietly, absorbing everything they said. There was still much to be done. But for now, the little girl was out of immediate danger. As the night wore on, the man found himself unable to leave. He had told himself he would just check on her and then go back to his own life, but now he couldn't imagine just walking away. At some point, the nurse brought him a blanket, offering him a place to rest by the girl's bedside. He pulled the blanket around himself, trying to get comfortable on the small couch in the corner of the room. He couldn't sleep, though. His mind was too full. Too many questions ran through his head. Who was this little girl? Why did she end up alone in the park? And why did he feel so connected to her? So protective of her? The hours passed, and soon the sun began to rise, casting a warm golden light through the window. He looked at the little girl, her face now relaxed in sleep, and felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing for certain: he couldn't walk away from this. Not from her. The morning brought new energy to the hospital. The doctors continued to monitor her progress, and as the man stood in the hallway, waiting for an update, he found himself making a decision. He would stay by her side. He would find out who she was, why she was in the park, and what he could do to help her. As he made his way back to her room, he felt a sense of resolve. This was more than just a random encounter. Something about this little girl had shifted something in him. He would not let her face whatever came next alone. And perhaps, just perhaps, in helping her, he would find a way to heal himself as well. The next few days passed slowly, with the man spending most of his time at the hospital, keeping watch over the little girl. He learned that her name was Lily, and though she was young, her life had already been filled with struggle. Her mother, a single parent, worked multiple jobs just to keep food on the table, and Lily had been suffering from a chronic illness that had only gotten worse over time. The hospital staff informed him that she had been living in difficult conditions, often going without proper meals, and it was clear she hadn't received the care she needed. One evening, after Lily had fallen asleep, the man sat by her bedside, reflecting on the decisions he had made over the past few days. His life had been so focused on his work and his own grief that he had never taken the time to truly look at the world around him. Now, with Lily in his life, everything had changed. He wasn't sure where this would go, but he knew he couldn't walk away. The next morning, as he sat at her side, a nurse entered the room, her expression serious. "Mr. Carter," she began, addressing him by the name he had given when he arrived at the hospital. "We've received some troubling news. Lily's mother has been in an accident. She's in critical condition, and we don't know how long she'll be able to stay with us." The news hit him harder than he expected. He had barely known Lily's mother, but the thought of her being in danger made his heart ache. He stood up quickly, feeling the weight of the moment. "Where is she?" he asked urgently. The nurse gave him the information, and within minutes, he was on his way to the other wing of the hospital. As he entered the intensive care unit, he saw Lily's mother lying in a bed, hooked up to machines. She looked so fragile, so small against the sterile backdrop of the room. The man stood at the door for a moment, unsure of what to do. He didn't know this woman, but he knew she was all Lily had. He couldn't let her down. When the woman's eyes fluttered open, the man approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. She looked up at him, confused at first, but then her eyes cleared, and she seemed to recognize him. "Lily," she whispered, her voice raspy. "Is she okay?" The man nodded. "She's stable for now," he said gently. "I'm here with her. She's not alone." The woman seemed to relax, her shoulders sagging in relief. She tried to smile, but it was weak. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how to thank you for looking after my little girl." "You don't need to thank me," the man replied, his voice soft but steady. "I'm just doing what anyone would do." The woman's gaze softened as she looked up at him. "Lily doesn't have much family. She's been through so much already. I don't know what I would have done if she was alone." The man felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't realized how much responsibility he had taken on in those few days. But now, looking at Lily's mother, he knew it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Lily, and making sure she had the life she deserved. As the day went on, he stayed by Lily's mother's side, offering her comfort, even though he didn't know the first thing about what she had been through. It was clear that she was a fighter, but the toll of everything in her life had worn her down. He knew that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't replace what Lily had lost, but he could help her. He could be there for her and make sure she had the best chance at a future. When the doctors told him that Lily's mother would need to stay in the hospital for several more days, the man made the decision to take responsibility for Lily. He wasn't sure how it would work, but he knew he couldn't let her go back to the circumstances she had been living in. She needed stability, and he could offer that. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. He had always been a man who made his decisions based on logic, on numbers, on what made the most sense. But this was different. This wasn't about numbers. This was about a little girl who had been through more than anyone should have to. This was about making sure she had a future, a life she could look forward to, a life free from the burden she had been carrying. And so the man made the promise to himself, and to Lily, that he would be there for her. He would give her the chance she deserved, no matter what it took. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was doing something truly meaningful. As he sat by Lily's bedside, watching her sleep peacefully for the first time in days, he knew this was just the beginning. The days following Lily's mother's hospitalization were filled with uncertainty and quiet resolve. The man, Grant Carter, had made his decision. He would be there for Lily, no matter the cost. He knew that life as a wealthy CEO could not be balanced with the responsibility of raising a sick little girl. But his heart told him it was the right thing to do. It wasn't just about helping her. It was about giving her a future she deserved, a future she had been robbed of due to circumstances beyond her control. Grant arranged for Lily to stay with him in his large estate while her mother recovered in the hospital. He wasn't sure how he would manage, but he had a deep sense of commitment to the child. He hired the best pediatricians, nutritionists, and caregivers to ensure Lily's recovery went smoothly. Every day he visited her, sitting by her side, reading her stories, or just talking to her. Lily, though quiet at first, began to open up to him. She smiled more, and her health slowly improved. But as days passed, Grant couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to be done for Lily. It was one evening, about a week after Lily moved into his home, that Grant was sitting in his office, working on some business reports, when he heard the soft sound of footsteps outside his door. He looked up to see Lily standing in the doorway, holding a drawing in her hand. Her eyes were wide, filled with a combination of curiosity and hesitation. "Can I come in?" she asked softly, her voice barely audible. Grant smiled, gesturing for her to enter. "Of course, come in, Lily. What's that you have there?" Lily stepped into the room, walking slowly toward his desk. "I made this for you," she said shyly, holding out the drawing. It was a simple picture of a house, with a tree in the yard and a sun shining brightly in the sky. At the bottom, in her childlike handwriting, were the words, ***home. ***. Grant's heart swelled with emotion as he took the drawing from her. He wasn't sure what to say, so he simply nodded and smiled. "It's beautiful, Lily. Thank you." He set it down on his desk beside his computer, where he could see it every day. "I like it here," Lily said quietly, looking around the large room. "It feels safe." Grant's expression softened. "I'm glad you feel that way," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I want you to feel safe here, always." Lily smiled, and Grant knew that in that moment, something had changed in both of them. He was no longer just a man helping a little girl. He was becoming a part of her life, and she was becoming a part of his. The loneliness he had carried for so long after losing his wife began to feel lighter, as though Lily's presence filled a space he hadn't even realized was empty. But as time went on, Grant knew that the situation couldn't last forever. Lily's mother, though recovering, was still in critical condition, and it was clear that she wouldn't be able to care for Lily for a while. As he sat in the quiet of his home, Grant found himself wondering how much longer he could keep Lily in his care. Could he really raise her on his own, with all the responsibilities of running his company and managing his own grief? One evening, as he walked Lily to her room, he paused at her door. "Lily," he began, his voice uncertain, "I've been thinking. I know this isn't easy for you, and I'm not sure what the future holds, but I want you to know that no matter what happens, I'll always be here for you." Lily looked up at him with wide eyes, her small face serious. "You're not going to leave me, are you?" she asked softly. Grant felt a tightness in his chest. "No, Lily, I'm not going anywhere, I promise you that." Lily smiled, a smile so pure and full of trust that it made Grant's heart ache. "Okay," she said, and then in a quiet voice added, "I'm glad you're here." Grant smiled back, bending down to kiss her forehead. "And I'm glad you're here, too." As he walked back down the hallway, he knew that his life had changed in ways he never could have imagined. The man who had once been consumed by his business and his own pain had found a new purpose in caring for a little girl. And though the future was uncertain, he was ready to face it, as long as Lily was by his side. The days turned into weeks, and Grant began to settle into a routine with Lily. He found himself becoming more and more connected to her, not just as her temporary guardian, but as a father figure in her life. He had always thought that his role in the world was limited to running his business. But now, with Lily, he had found a new sense of purpose. Her laughter, her simple questions, her occasional mischief, they all filled his home with warmth. But as much as he tried to make her feel at home, he knew that the world outside his estate wasn't so kind. One morning, after breakfast, Lily asked, "When will Mom come home?" Her voice was full of innocence, but Grant could hear the underlying sadness. She had been asking this question more frequently lately, and each time, it felt like a knife to his heart. He knew Lily's mother, Sarah, was improving, but her recovery was slow and uncertain. The doctors had told him it could be weeks, maybe even months, before she was stable enough to care for Lily again. As much as he tried to reassure Lily, he could see the worry in her eyes. It was as though she knew that something wasn't quite right. Grant had never been a man to shy away from challenges, but this one felt different. Caring for a child, especially one who had already endured so much, was an entirely new challenge, but he was determined to do whatever it took. He wasn't just helping Lily out of obligation, he was beginning to see her as his own. He could not, would not, let her down. One evening, after tucking Lily into bed, Grant sat by his office window, staring out at the sprawling estate. His phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. It was a message from his lawyer, Mark Davis. "Grant, we need to talk about your will." The words hung in the air, reminding him of the uncertainty that still loomed in his life. He had always kept his personal matters separate from his business, but now, with Lily's future at stake, things had changed. Grant sat back in his chair, taking a deep breath. His thoughts turned to Lily again. He had made her a promise that he would always be there for her. But could he really keep that promise? His wealth, his position, none of it seemed to matter anymore. What mattered was her future. The next day, Grant met with Mark at his office. Mark, a man of few words, sat across from him, his face serious. "You know, Grant, it's not just about business anymore. You have to start thinking about your legacy, about Lily's future." Grant nodded, his eyes distant. "I know," he replied, his voice heavy. "But I'm not sure what that future looks like. I want to do right by her, Mark. I can't just throw money at her and expect everything to be fine. She needs more than that. She needs love, stability, and someone who'll be there for her when I'm gone." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Are you thinking of adopting her?" The question caught Grant off guard. He had never considered adoption before, but as the words left Mark's lips, something inside him clicked. Of course. If he wanted Lily to have a future, a true future, he would have to give her more than just a place to live. He would have to give her a family. "That's exactly what I need to do," Grant said, his voice steady. "I want to adopt her." Mark nodded, a small smile crossing his face. "Then we'll make it happen, Grant. It's going to take time, but it's the right choice." Later that afternoon, Grant returned to his estate, his heart a little lighter. He had made a decision, one that felt right in every way. As he walked into the living room, he found Lily sitting on the couch, reading a book. She looked up at him, her face lighting up when she saw him. "Hi, Mr. Grant," she said brightly. Her smile so genuine, it took his breath away. "Hi, Lily," he replied, sitting down beside her. "How's the book?" "It's good," she said, her voice full of enthusiasm. "It's about a girl who goes on adventures. I like it a lot." Grant smiled, his heart swelling. He realized then that it didn't matter what the world outside thought. What mattered was the bond he was forming with Lily. She was no longer just a little girl he was helping. She was his daughter now, and he would do everything in his power to give her the life she deserved. That night, as he tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at him and asked softly, "Do you think Mom will be okay?" Grant gently brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "I do, Lily. She's strong, just like you." Lily smiled, her eyes closing as she drifted off to sleep. Grant stood there for a moment, watching her, before silently leaving the room. As he closed the door behind him, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. He had made a choice, and that choice was to give Lily the future she deserved, no matter what it took. Weeks passed, and with each day, Lily and Grant's bond grew stronger. The decision to adopt her had been made, and they were beginning the legal process. For Grant, it was a new chapter in his life, one filled with challenges, but also with the warmth of something he hadn't known he was missing. He had been so consumed by business and the loss of his wife that he had forgotten what it meant to truly care for someone. But with Lily, everything had changed. She wasn't just a little girl under his roof. She was his daughter now. One morning, as Grant was preparing for a meeting, Lily came into the kitchen, holding something in her hands. She was beaming with excitement, her eyes wide with hope. "Look, Mr. Grant, I made this for you," she said, holding up a small, handmade card. The card was simple, with a drawing of a heart and the words, "Best Dad Ever," written in crooked letters. Grant's heart melted as he took the card from her. He hadn't realized how much that small gesture would mean to him. He had been so caught up in the complexities of his own life that he hadn't truly understood how much Lily needed him or how much he needed her. He smiled at her, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Lily. This means the world to me." Lily's smile grew wider, and she hugged him. "I'm glad you like it. I think you're a great dad." Grant felt a lump form in his throat as he hugged her back. The word dad felt so new, yet so right. He had been a father once, but that had been a lifetime ago. Now, with Lily, he had the chance to be a father again, and this time, it was different. This time, he wouldn't fail her. The weeks continued to pass, and as the legal process for adoption moved forward, Grant began to realize something. He had never been the type of person to show his emotions. He had spent most of his life guarding his heart, afraid to let anyone in. But Lily had broken down those walls, piece by piece. She had a way of making him see the world differently, of making him see that life was about more than just business, money, and success. It was a Saturday afternoon when Grant received a call from the hospital. Sarah, Lily's mother, had been released from the intensive care unit and was now in a recovery room. It wasn't a complete recovery, but it was progress. The doctors were hopeful, and that hope filled Grant with a mixture of relief and worry. He knew that Lily needed to be with her mother, but he also knew that his role in her life couldn't be erased. The next day, Grant took Lily to the hospital to see her mother. He didn't know how Sarah would react to the changes in Lily's life, how she would feel about him becoming a part of her daughter's future. But he knew he had to do this. He had to give Lily the chance to reconnect with her mother, while also making sure she had a stable future. When they arrived at the hospital, Grant and Lily were led into Sarah's room. She looked fragile, much smaller than Grant had remembered, but her eyes were filled with recognition when she saw her daughter. Lily ran to her mother's side, wrapping her arms around Sarah. "Mom!" Lily cried, her voice full of emotion. Sarah hugged her back, tears welling up in her eyes. "Lily, my sweet girl, I've missed you so much." Grant stood in the doorway, watching the reunion with a mixture of emotions. He had hoped that this moment would be a happy one, but there was something bittersweet about it. Sarah had missed so much of Lily's life, and now, as she slowly recovered, she would have to catch up on all that had passed. "Sarah," Grant said softly, stepping into the room. Sarah looked up at him, her expression unsure. "Grant," she whispered, her voice weak but full of gratitude. "I can't thank you enough for what you've done for Lily." Grant nodded, his voice steady. "I'm just glad she's safe. She deserves the best." Sarah looked at Lily, then back at Grant. "You've done more for her than I could ever have done. I don't know what the future holds, but if she's with you, I know she'll be okay." Grant's heart swelled. He hadn't expected Sarah to be so understanding, but he was grateful for her words. He wasn't sure what the future would look like, but he knew that Lily needed both her mother and him. It would take time, but they would find a way to make it work. The conversation moved to more practical matters as Sarah talked about her recovery and what Lily needed. They discussed the next steps, including therapy and taking things slowly. Grant agreed to help in any way he could, but he also made it clear that he would be there for Lily no matter what. He had promised her that he wouldn't leave, and he intended to keep that promise. As they left the hospital later that afternoon, Lily held Grant's hand tightly. She looked up at him with a sense of security, as though she knew that everything would be okay. Grant didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in a long while, he felt that he was on the right path. He had given Lily a family, and in doing so, he had found his own redemption. The future was still uncertain, but together, they would face whatever came next. Grant had found a new sense of purpose, and with Lily by his side, he knew that no matter what life threw at them, they would make it through together. The days that followed were filled with a mix of hope and tension as Sarah continued to recover in the hospital. Grant knew that things could never go back to the way they were before, but he was ready for the challenge. Lily, now more confident and cheerful, was adjusting well to her new life. She had come to see Grant not just as someone helping her, but as someone she could trust, someone she could rely on. The bond between them had grown stronger, and every day she seemed to need him more. As time passed, Sarah's health improved, and the doctors were hopeful that she would soon be strong enough to care for Lily again. But Grant knew it wasn't going to be as simple as picking up where they had left off. The months of separation had left their mark on both mother and daughter. Lily, though she loved her mother dearly, had become accustomed to living with Grant, and the thought of leaving his home unsettled her. Grant had always prided himself on being a man of action, a man who made decisions quickly and confidently, but when it came to Lily and Sarah, he found himself unsure. He didn't want to stand in the way of Lily reuniting with her mother, but he also didn't want to let go of the little girl who had become his daughter in every way that mattered. One afternoon, as Grant sat in his study, going over some papers, he heard Lily's voice in the hallway. She was speaking softly, and though he couldn't hear her exact words, he could tell by the tone that something was bothering her. He stood up and walked to the door, opening it just as Lily was walking past. "Lily," Grant said gently, his voice soft but firm. "Is everything okay?" Lily stopped, looking up at him with wide eyes. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'm okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Grant could see the unease in her expression. She wasn't okay, and she knew it. But he also knew that now wasn't the time to press her. He smiled warmly, trying to reassure her. "Come here, let's talk for a minute." Lily looked up at him, and after a brief pause, walked over to where he stood. She climbed into the chair beside him, her small hands fidgeting nervously in her lap. Grant could feel the weight of her unease, and he waited patiently for her to speak. After a long silence, Lily finally spoke. "Mr. Grant, will I still get to see you when I go back to Mom?" The question hit Grant like a punch to the stomach. He had been preparing himself for this moment, But hearing it from Lily's lips made the reality of the situation feel so much more real. He sat down beside her, his voice low and comforting. "Lily," he said gently, "I will always be here for you. No matter what happens, you are my daughter. You will always be a part of my life." Lily looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and confusion. "But, will you be my dad even if I live with Mom?" Grant's heart broke at the question. He had never wanted to be a replacement for Sarah. He only wanted to be the person Lily needed him to be. He took her hands in his voice steady. "Lily, no matter where you live, I'll always be your dad. I may not be your biological father, but I'm your father in every other way. I'll always be here for you, no matter what." Lily's eyes filled with tears, and she threw her arms around him. "I don't want to leave you," she whispered, her voice muffled against his shoulder. Grant hugged her tightly, his own eyes stinging with emotion. He had never imagined that he would feel this way about a child who wasn't his own. But now, he couldn't imagine his life without her. "I know, sweetheart," Grant said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I don't want you to leave either. But you have a mom who loves you, and she's going to need you too. We'll figure this out together. You'll always have a place with me." For the next few days, Lily seemed quieter than usual. Grant could see the inner conflict brewing in her. She wanted to be with her mother, but she was scared of leaving the safety and comfort of his home. He could only hope that, when the time came, she would understand that the love they shared would never change, no matter where she was. One afternoon, as Grant and Lily sat in the garden, enjoying the warmth of the sun, Sarah called. She wanted to see Lily. The doctors had given her a few hours outside the hospital, and she was eager to spend some time with her daughter. Grant told Lily about the call, and Lily's face lit up with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Do you want to go see Mom?" Grant asked softly. Lily nodded, but her eyes were filled with uncertainty. "I'm scared," she admitted. Grant smiled and took her hand. "It's okay to be scared. But you don't have to face it alone. I'll be right there with you." As they drove to the hospital, Lily sat quietly beside him, her small hand in his. Grant kept his focus on the road, but his mind was racing. He wasn't sure what would happen when they arrived, but he knew one thing for sure. He would stand by Lily, no matter what. When they arrived at the hospital, Sarah was waiting for them in a small lounge area. She looked pale, but her eyes brightened when she saw Lily. The moment Lily stepped into the room, Sarah reached out for her, and Lily ran to her, wrapping her arms around her mother. Grant stood at the door, watching the reunion. It wasn't easy, but it was a step forward. He could see the love between them, and it was a reminder that no matter what, they would always be a family. After the emotional reunion between Lily and Sarah, things seemed to be moving in the right direction. Lily spent the following weeks with her mother in the hospital as Sarah continued to regain her strength. Grant, while still very much a part of Lily's life, took a step back to allow mother and daughter to reconnect. He spent his time working, ensuring that everything was in order for his business, but his thoughts were often with Lily. He couldn't help but wonder about the future. Would they be able to adjust to this new dynamic, with Sarah now a part of their lives again? Would Lily be able to handle the transition? These were the questions that kept him up at night. One evening, about a week after the reunion, Grant sat alone in his office. The house was quiet, Lily had gone to bed, and Sarah was resting after another long day of physical therapy. The weight of his thoughts pressed on him as he stared at the papers in front of him. The adoption process had been delayed by Sarah's recovery, but it was still moving forward. Grant had made the decision to adopt Lily, and no matter what, he knew that was the right choice for her. But he wasn't sure how to navigate the delicate balance of keeping Lily in his life, while also respecting Sarah's role as her mother. As he sat there, his phone buzzed on the desk, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a text message from Sarah. "Can we talk tomorrow? I need to ask you something important." Grant's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew that whatever Sarah wanted to discuss was going to change things. The next morning, as he made his way to the kitchen, Grant found Sarah sitting at the table with a cup of coffee in front of her. She looked up when he entered, her expression serious but calm. "Good morning," Grant said, trying to read her face. "Good morning," Sarah replied, her voice steady. She took a sip of her coffee before setting the cup down. "Grant, I've been thinking a lot about everything. About Lily, about you, about what's best for her." Grant sat down across from her, his heart beating a little faster. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. "I know you've been there for her, and I can never thank you enough for everything you've done. But I also know that I need to step up as her mother. I want to be there for her, to take care of her. And I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to let you do this alone. But I also want to make sure that Lily knows I'm her mother, and I'll always be here for her, no matter what." Grant nodded, his thoughts racing. "I've never wanted to take Lily away from you, Sarah. I want you to be part of her life. He paused, trying to find the right words. "I just want what's best for her. I know she needs you, but she also needs stability. She needs someone who will always be there for her, no matter what." Sarah's eyes softened, and she reached out, placing her hand over his. "I know, Grant, and that's why I'm asking you to help me. I know it's going to be difficult, but I want to work together. I want us both to be there for her. I don't want her to feel like she has to choose between us." Grant felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had been so worried about how everything would play out, about the possibility of losing Lily. But now, it seemed like they were on the same page. They were both willing to put Lily first, to work together as a family. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes," Grant said, his voice firm with determination. "I want her to feel safe, loved, and supported. But we have to be a team, Sarah. We have to be on the same page, and I can't do this without you." Sarah smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "We will be a team, Grant. I promise. We'll make sure Lily knows she's loved, no matter what." Over the next few weeks, Sarah and Grant continued to have deep conversations about their roles in Lily's life. It wasn't always easy, but they found a rhythm. They agreed that Lily would spend time with both of them, and they worked out a schedule that allowed for both mother and father to be involved in her daily life. There were still moments of uncertainty, but they were learning how to navigate their new reality together. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Lily looked up at both of them. "I like this," she said quietly. "I like that you're both here. It feels like a family." Grant's heart swelled at her words. He looked at Sarah, who was also smiling, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like everything was finally coming together. They had a long way to go, but they were no longer just two people trying to figure things out on their own. They were a family, and they would face whatever challenges came their way, together. As the days turned into months, Grant realized that the bond he had with Lily wasn't just about the time they spent together. It was about love, commitment, and the promise he had made to always be there for her. The future was still uncertain, but with Sarah by his side and Lily in their lives, Grant knew that they would be okay. They were a family now, and nothing would ever change that. Months passed, and the new family dynamic between Grant, Sarah, and Lily was becoming more natural. The adjustments were not always easy, but they were growing stronger as a family every day. They had their challenges. Sarah's health was still fragile, and there were moments when Lily would retreat into herself, unsure of her place between her mother and Grant. But through it all, they learned to support each other in ways they never had before. Grant, once a solitary businessman focused only on his empire, now found his heart full, not with financial success, but with the love and responsibility he felt for Lily and Sarah. One afternoon, Grant was sitting in his study when Lily came running in, holding something in her hand. Her face was glowing with excitement, and she looked like she couldn't wait to share whatever she had in her possession. "Mr. Grant, look!" she exclaimed, thrusting a paper into his hands. It was a drawing, one of Lily's usual, simple yet endearing creations. This one showed their family a big house with 3 stick figures, one for each of them, standing together in front. Grant smiled, his heart warming at the sight. He hadn't realized just how much Lily had come to see him as a true father figure. In her world, he was not just a temporary guardian, but a constant, someone she could count on. He looked at her, his voice soft. "This is beautiful, Lily. I love it." Lily beamed, clearly proud of her work. "I'm glad you like it. I drew it because I think we're a family now." Grant's heart swelled, but his throat tightened with emotion. He had been so focused on the logistics of their lives, the adoption, Sarah's recovery, the business, that he hadn't truly stopped to realize just how much Lily had come to believe in this new life they were building together. "We are a family," Grant said, the words coming from a place deep inside him. "And we always will be." Lily smiled up at him, and for a moment, It was just the two of them, as though nothing else in the world mattered. The weight of his earlier doubts about his role in her life, the uncertainty about whether he could truly replace what she had lost, all seemed to disappear in that moment. The door to his study opened, and Sarah walked in, looking much stronger than she had when she first came home from the hospital. She still had moments of exhaustion, but she was beginning to regain her strength, both physically and emotionally. Seeing her standing there, her face a little worn but filled with love, made Grant's chest tighten with affection. "Hey," Sarah said, smiling warmly as she walked over to the desk where Grant and Lily were sitting. "How's my two favorite people doing?" Lily jumped up, running into her mother's arms. "Mom, look! I drew a picture of us!" Sarah's eyes softened as she took the drawing from Lily's hands. "It's perfect, sweetheart," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It's beautiful." Grant watched the two of them, a smile tugging at his lips. The house, once so quiet and empty, now felt full of life and love. It wasn't the life he had imagined for himself, but it was the life he had come to cherish. As Sarah sat down beside them, Lily climbed onto her lap, and the three of them shared a quiet moment together. Grant couldn't help but think how far they had come from the days when he first took Lily in, unsure of what his role would be, unsure of how everything would turn out. But now, looking at the way Lily had come to see him as her father, looking at Sarah's quiet strength and the love they had rebuilt, he knew that he had made the right decision. But despite the progress they had made, there was still something hanging over them, something Grant couldn't ignore. The legal process for adoption had been slow, hampered by Sarah's extended recovery and their complicated family situation. It wasn't that Grant doubted they would eventually be a legal family, but the longer it took, the more anxiety crept into his mind. Was there still a chance that something could tear them apart? Grant had always been a man of certainty, but in matters of family, he was learning that certainty was not always guaranteed. As much as he wanted everything to be perfect, he knew that they would have to face some difficult challenges ahead. But no matter what, he was committed to making this work for Lily, for Sarah, and for himself. One evening, Sarah turned to him as they sat together after dinner. "Grant, we need to talk." He looked at her, his heart immediately racing. "About what?" She took a deep breath, her eyes filled with sincerity. "About the future. About us. I know things have been difficult, but I think it's time we make some real decisions about where we go from here." Grant nodded, feeling a tightness in his chest. He knew what she was saying. The uncertainty about their family, about their future, had been lingering for months. It was time to stop living in the gray area. "I think we should take the next step," Sarah said quietly, her voice full of resolve. "I want us to be a real family. I don't want to live in limbo anymore. I want us to commit to each other, legally, completely." Grant's heart skipped a beat. He had been waiting for this moment, but hearing Sarah speak the words out loud made everything feel so much more real. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. "I'm sure," Sarah replied, her hand resting on his. "We've come this far. It's time to make it official." Grant smiled, a sense of relief flooding through him. "Then let's do it. Let's make it official, for all of us." And so, the process began. The adoption, the legal proceedings, the final step to making Lily officially his daughter. It wasn't going to be easy, but with Sarah by his side, Grant knew that they could handle whatever came their way. The family they had built was no longer just a dream, it was real. And nothing, not even the challenges ahead, could ever take that away. The days following Grant and Sarah's conversation about their future were filled with a mix of anticipation and excitement. Grant had always been the type of person who liked to plan ahead, but this was different. This was about building something that could last forever, a family, a bond that would hold them together no matter what. As the legal proceedings for Lily's adoption began to take shape, the feeling of certainty that had been missing for so long started to settle in. They were on the right path, and they were doing it together. Sarah's recovery had taken longer than expected, but she was now strong enough to care for Lily on her own. She had started looking for a part-time job and was adjusting to the new rhythm of her life. Though there were still moments of weakness, both physical and emotional, Sarah was more determined than ever to be the mother Lily needed. One afternoon, as Lily and Grant were in the living room playing a board game, Sarah walked in with a big smile on her face. "Guess what?" she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Lily looked up from the game board, her face lighting up. "What, Mom?" "I got a job," Sarah said, beaming. "I'll be working part-time at the local library. It's not much, but it's a start. And I'll be able to pick up Lily from school." Lily jumped up from the floor, her excitement matching Sarah's. "That's amazing, Mom! I'm so proud of you." Grant watched the two of them, a warm feeling filling his chest. He had always believed in hard work, in the value of perseverance. But seeing Sarah take charge of her life like this made him realize just how far they had come. Not long ago, Sarah had been struggling with her health, unsure of what the future would hold. Now, here she was, taking steps to reclaim her independence and contribute to their family. "Thanks, Lily," Sarah said, pulling her into a hug. She then looked at Grant, her smile softening. "And thank you too for everything you've done. I don't know how I would have gotten through all of this without you." Grant smiled, but it was a quiet smile, the kind that came from the heart. "We're a team, Sarah. We're in this together." As Sarah continued to work on getting back to normal, Grant focused on getting Lily's adoption finalized. The paperwork was moving along, but there were still some hurdles to jump. Legal challenges, bureaucracy, and delays from various agencies all made the process longer than he had hoped. But Grant wasn't deterred. He had promised Lily that he would be there for her, and he was willing to fight for that promise every step of the way. One evening, as Grant was heading into his office to finish some paperwork, he noticed Lily standing by the front door, holding something in her hand. It was a small, worn-out teddy bear, one that she had carried with her ever since she first came to live with him. She was looking down at it, her eyes deep in thought. "Lily?" Grant said softly, his voice gentle as he approached her. She looked up at him, and he could see the hesitation in her eyes. I think I'm ready," she said quietly. "I think I'm ready to make it official." Grant paused, unsure of what she meant. "Make what official?" Lily took a deep breath and stepped closer to him, her small hands clutching the teddy bear tightly. "I want to be adopted by you. I want to be your daughter. I know I already am, but I just want it to be real." Grant felt a lump form in his throat. He had never imagined that a child who had been through so much would be the one to push for this. But in that moment, he understood exactly what Lily needed. She didn't need to wonder anymore if she was truly part of this family. She didn't need to question whether her place in their lives was permanent. "I want that too, Lily," Grant said softly, kneeling down to her level. "I've wanted it since the day I met you. You're my daughter, and nothing will ever change that." Lily's eyes filled with tears, and she wrapped her arms around him, holding on tightly. "Thank you, Mr. Grant. Thank you for making me feel like I belong." Grant hugged her back, his heart full of love. "You belong here, with us, always." The next day, Grant called his lawyer to speed up the adoption process. He couldn't wait any longer. The paperwork, the legalities, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was that Lily knew she was loved, that she had a family who would always be there for her. The following weeks passed quickly, and finally, the day came when Lily's adoption was finalized. Grant stood beside her in the courtroom, holding her hand as they waited for the judge's ruling. Sarah was there too, her face filled with a mixture of pride and emotion. When the judge declared that the adoption was complete, Grant felt a wave of relief wash over him. Lily looked up at him, her eyes shining with happiness. "It's official now, right?" she asked, her voice full of wonder. "It's official, sweetheart," Grant said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're my daughter, and I'm your dad. Forever." Lily smiled, and for the first time in a long time, she truly looked at home. The family they had built together through patience, love, and determination was now stronger than ever. As they left the courthouse hand in hand, Grant knew that they had made it through the toughest part. They were a family, and nothing could ever change that. The days after the adoption became official were filled with a sense of peace that Grant had not felt in years. He had fought hard for this moment, and now that it was here, he could finally breathe. The transition to becoming a full family, with Lily now officially his daughter, was smoother than he had expected. The house, once quiet and filled with tension, now echoed with laughter, chatter, and the simple joy of daily life. Lily, with her new sense of belonging, seemed more confident and at ease. She had blossomed into a child who was no longer just surviving, she was thriving. But even as the family settled into their new normal, challenges still remained. Sarah was adjusting to her role as a mother in this new chapter. And Grant, though he had grown closer to Lily than ever, still faced the complexities of balancing his responsibilities as a father and a CEO. There were moments of doubt, moments when Grant wondered if he was doing everything right. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had found the right balance. One Saturday afternoon, as Grant was at his desk finishing some work, Lily burst into the room, her excitement palpable. "Mr. Grant!" she said, running up to him. "I did something today, you have to see it." Grant smiled and stood up, intrigued by her enthusiasm. "What did you do, Lily?" he asked, crouching down to her level. "I made a scrapbook," she said, holding out a colorful binder filled with pages of drawings, cutouts, and pictures. "It's for our family. I want to remember all the fun things we've done together." Grant's heart swelled as he took the scrapbook from her hands. He flipped through the pages, seeing photos of the three of them at the park, baking cookies in the kitchen, reading books together in the living room. Each page was filled with memories, little moments that had made their family whole. "This is amazing, Lily," Grant said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've captured all of our best moments." Lily beamed, clearly proud of her work. "I want to add more pictures, too. Like when we go on that trip to the beach next month. And when I get my new school supplies." Grant chuckled, his heart light. "I think that sounds like a great idea. We'll fill this scrapbook up with even more memories." Lily nodded enthusiastically, and Grant could see how much the idea of family, of belonging, meant to her. The scrapbook wasn't just a collection of photos. It was a representation of everything they had built together. It was a tangible reminder that they were a family now, no matter what had come before. Later that evening, after dinner, Sarah and Grant sat on the porch, watching the sunset together. The air was warm, the sky painted in shades of pink and orange. It was one of those rare moments when everything felt just right. "You know," Sarah said softly, breaking the comfortable silence, "I never thought we'd be here, that we'd have this life together." Grant looked over at her, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I never thought so either, but I'm glad we're here." Sarah leaned back in her chair, gazing out at the horizon. "It's been a tough road, but I think we're finally on the right track. I'm proud of everything we've built. Of you, of me, of Lily. It's all worth it." Grant's smile grew, and he reached out to take her hand. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Sarah nodded. "We've made it through the hardest parts, and now we get to enjoy the good parts." The conversation turned to their future, to what they wanted for Lily and for themselves. They talked about taking family trips, building new memories, and creating a home where Lily could flourish. It wasn't always going to be easy, they knew that. There would be bumps in the road, challenges they hadn't anticipated. But they also knew that together, they could handle whatever came their way. As the evening wore on, Grant found himself thinking about the future in a way he never had before. It wasn't about success, or money, or prestige. It was about this, a family, a daughter, and a life full of love and possibilities. The foundation they had built was strong, and Grant knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. The next few weeks passed in a blur of family outings, school preparations, and small, everyday moments. Lily's confidence continued to grow, and Sarah's strength and determination to be the best mother she could be were evident in everything she did. They were finding their rhythm, learning how to be a family in this new chapter of their lives. And one evening, as Grant tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at him with a soft smile. "Mr. Grant, I'm really happy here. I love being with you and Mom." Grant's heart swelled with emotion as he kissed her forehead. "We love you too, Lily. We're so proud of you." As he left her room and closed the door softly behind him, Grant stood in the hallway for a moment, taking it all in. This, he realized, was his purpose. Not the deals, the business, or the accolades. It was Lily, Sarah, and the family they had created together. The future was still unknown, but Grant knew that with the love and strength they had as a family, there was nothing they couldn't face. And no matter what came next, they would always have each other. Months passed, and the Carter family had settled into a rhythm that felt natural, yet filled with small milestones of growth. Grant had never imagined that his life would lead him down this path, But now, as he watched Lily laugh with Sarah in the kitchen, he couldn't help but feel that everything was as it should be. They had come so far from the early days of uncertainty and hesitation. The adoption was final, their home full of love and warmth, and both Sarah and Lily were thriving in ways Grant had never expected. Sarah had found stability in her work at the local library. And Lily, now confident and full of joy, was excelling in school and had started making more friends. It seemed that everything was aligning perfectly, and for the first time in years, Grant felt at peace. However, life had a way of testing even the most well-established routines. Grant had been working long hours as usual, his business requiring his attention more than he had hoped. As the CEO of a large corporation, his responsibilities were vast, and there were moments when he wished he could be more present for Lily and Sarah. Despite his success, there were still days when he felt like something was missing. It wasn't until one evening that he realized what had been weighing on his mind. He was in his office, staring out the window at the setting sun, when his phone buzzed. It was a message from Sarah. "Can we talk when you get home? There's something I need to tell you." Grant's stomach tightened. He didn't know what to expect, but the tone of Sarah's message left him unsettled. He quickly finished his work and headed home, his mind racing with possibilities. When he walked in the door, he found Sarah and Lily sitting at the dining table, their faces serious. Lily looked up at him with wide eyes, and Sarah smiled softly, but there was an unease behind it. "Hey, what's going on?" Grant asked, trying to keep his voice calm despite the sudden surge of worry. Sarah motioned for him to sit down. "There's something I need to tell you, Grant," she said, her voice steady but carrying an undertone of concern. "I've been offered a full-time position at the library. It's a great opportunity, and it will help us financially." Grant's first instinct was to feel happy for Sarah. She had worked hard to get where she was, and he was proud of her. But as she continued, he realized that there was more to this conversation. "It's a good opportunity," Sarah continued, "but it would mean working long hours. And I know that we've been able to manage things well with me working part-time, but I'm concerned about how it might affect things here. I don't want to take on too much, and I don't want Lily to feel like we're not there for her." Grant listened carefully, his mind processing the information. He could see Sarah's concern. She didn't want to overwhelm herself, and she didn't want Lily to feel neglected. He had always admired her ability to balance work and motherhood, and he knew this would be a big change for their family. "I understand," Grant said slowly. "I want you to do what makes you happy and what's best for all of us. We've worked so hard to build this life, and I don't want you to feel like you're sacrificing your future. But I also want to make sure we're still there for each other, especially for Lily." Lily, who had been sitting quietly through the conversation, suddenly spoke up. "I don't want things to change," she said, her voice small but determined. "I like having you both here, together. I like how things are now." Grant felt his heart tighten. He knew Lily had become accustomed to their routines, and change, while often necessary, could be hard for her. But he also knew that this was a part of growing, for all of them. "Change is hard, Lily," Grant said softly, his voice full of understanding. "But sometimes it's also a good thing. We'll figure it out together. The most important thing is that we're a family, and no matter what happens, we'll always have each other." Lily nodded, but Grant could see the uncertainty in her eyes. Sarah reached out and took Lily's hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "We're not going anywhere, sweetheart," she said. "We're just figuring out what's best for us, and that means making some adjustments. But I promise, we're in this together." Over the next few weeks, the family worked together to adjust to the new reality. Sarah took the full-time job at the library, and though the hours were longer, they found ways to keep the family connected. Grant made a point to spend more time with Lily, helping with homework, cooking dinner together, and attending her school events. Lily, though she missed having Sarah around as much, began to adjust to the new routine. The balance they sought wasn't always easy, but it was theirs. They faced challenges together, with open communication and mutual understanding. There were moments of doubt, especially when Lily seemed withdrawn, or when Sarah came home exhausted. But they always found their way back to each other. One evening, as the family sat together at dinner, Lily looked around the table and smiled. "I like this," she said softly. "It feels like we're really a family." Grant and Sarah exchanged a glance, their hearts full. They had made it through so much together, and they knew that no matter what came next, they would face it as a family. They had built something beautiful, something lasting, and nothing could take that away. As they finished their meal, Grant raised his glass in a quiet toast. "To us," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "To family." And as they clinked their glasses, Lily's laughter filled the room, a sound that was more precious than anything else in the world. As the months passed, Grant, Sarah, and Lily continued to grow stronger as a family. Their life, once filled with uncertainty, now radiated with warmth and love. Every day brought new challenges, but together, they were learning how to navigate them with grace and resilience. Sarah had settled into her new full-time job at the library, finding joy in her work and feeling fulfilled in a way she hadn't in years. Grant had found a better balance between his business responsibilities and his role as a father, realizing that family was no longer something that could be put on the back burner. The bond they shared as a family was stronger than ever. Lily had blossomed into a confident, happy child, no longer burdened by the uncertainty of her past. She was thriving, excelling in school, making friends, and learning to embrace the love that surrounded her. One day, as the family sat together in the living room, playing a game, Sarah looked at Grant with a soft smile, her eyes filled with love. "You know," she said, her voice warm, "I never thought we would be here. I didn't think I would be able to build a life like this after everything that happened." Grant smiled, his heart swelling with affection for her. "Neither did I," he admitted. "But I'm glad we're here. I'm glad we built this together." Lily, sitting on the floor between them, looked up at her parents with a bright smile. "I'm glad too," she said, her voice full of innocence. "This is the best family ever." Grant's heart swelled as he looked at Lily, the little girl who had become his world. He thought about how much she had changed since the day he had first met her, the scared, sick little girl who had been lost in the world. And now, she was confident, joyful, and full of dreams for the future. He could see it in her eyes. She knew she belonged, and that meant everything to him. The weeks turned into months, and the family's life continued to settle into a peaceful rhythm. They went on family trips, spent time together on weekends, and continued to make memories that would last a lifetime. Grant and Sarah had become a true team, supporting each other through the ups and downs of life. They didn't have all the answers, but they had each other, and that was enough. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Grant looked at Sarah and Lily, his heart filled with gratitude. He raised his glass in a quiet toast. "To us," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "To family." Lily smiled and raised her glass, clinking it softly against her parents. "To family," she echoed. As they sat together, enjoying their meal, Grant couldn't help but reflect on the journey they had been through. It had been a long road, full of struggles and moments of doubt, but they had made it. They had built something beautiful together, something that no one could take away. He had promised Lily that he would always be there for her. And now, that promise was fulfilled. She was his daughter, and he was her father, not just by blood, but by choice, by love, and by the bond they had created. Grant looked at Sarah, his eyes softening. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said, his voice filled with appreciation. Sarah smiled and took his hand. "We did it together." And for the first time in years, Grant felt at peace. He had found a new purpose in life, and that purpose was to be the best father he could be to Lily, to give her the love and stability she deserved. No matter what the future held, he knew they would face it together, as a family. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every moment. They had come through the darkness and into the light, stronger, closer, and more united than ever. And as they sat together at that dinner table, surrounded by love and laughter, Grant knew that this was just the beginning. Their family had been built on trust, sacrifice, and most of all, love. And nothing could ever take that away. They were a family, forever. In this touching and heartfelt journey of a millionaire's unexpected path to fatherhood, witness how the life of a successful businessman is forever changed by a little girl in need of love and stability. This is one of the most heartwarming millionaire stories, showcasing the emotional transformation of a man who initially saw wealth and success as his only achievements, but soon discovers the true meaning of family, sacrifice, and unconditional love. From the moment this millionaire takes responsibility for a sick little girl, he embarks on a journey full of challenges, doubts, and eventual triumphs. The powerful bond between them grows as they learn to navigate their lives together, proving that millionaire stories aren't just about money, but about making real connections that change lives. With each passing day, the millionaire finds himself more deeply involved in Lily's life, helping her heal, and ultimately realizing that this little girl is the family he always needed. As he balances his work and fatherhood, he faces the ups and downs of life, but never loses sight of the love and commitment that make him a true father. This story, like many other touching millionaire stories, reveals that the real wealth lies not in possessions, but in the bonds we build. The ultimate question is whether this millionaire will find lasting happiness as a father, and how the love for his daughter changes him forever, giving him a purpose beyond his business empire. Follow their journey as they come together as a family, proving that millionaire stories can also be about love, resilience, and the power of human connection.